panel. Wrong one. John from Nashville, nice. Happy to have you. You're in with all these Michigan people here today. So welcome from Nashville. All right, let me get rid of this here. All right, guys, so let's get started. Excited about the webinar here. Goal with this webinar, right? We're covering a holistic approach to injury prevention for runners. Could really apply to anything and everything what we're going to cover here today. So hopefully, again, regardless of what you're getting into with your training, running, triathlon, just injuries in general, this can be applicable across the board. Our goal here is to teach you how to turn your body into a resilient and successful running machine. We don't want success without resilience, right? We want to make sure we're doing the things to to really implement a good long-term approach with our training so we can see more success for years and years to come. So it's not a short-lived thing. But during this webinar today, you're going to learn about the most common running-related injuries and the risk factors associated with them. Understand the effectiveness of popular injury prevention strategies such as foam rolling, static stretching, and strength training. And then identify key lifestyle and training tendencies. I think this will be important for you. I'm going to look at this from a kind of a different lens than I have before. But understand just how your training and life fit together. And is that actually predisposing you to injury? We always look at training. We always look at running. We always look at running form and those things, strengths, weaknesses, that, and we say that's the thing. Oftentimes we don't consider the other areas of life, which could actually be increasing our risk without us even knowing about it. At the very end, I'm going to share some details. I have it's the second time I've run this program, but a 6-week program. It's called Function Over Fitness. This program really covers everything we're going to go over here today in the webinar. It puts it into an actual program so that you can get evaluated, go through the program, get a specific strength training, injury prevention, running plan, and then I don't want to give away the key points yet, but tap into some of these other areas of wellness, which if we can tap into, we'll see just great results when it comes to running. So I'm going to share some details on that program at the very end. Before we begin, though, no distractions. If you guys are over there surfing Instagram or kids are yelling next to you there, lock the kids away, turn the phone down, turn the TV off. I know Wheel of Fortune is probably rolling on right now. So you guys can kind of hang out here for about 50 minutes or so. Focus down. I know you'll get some good value from the webinar today. Grab a pen and pencil. So I want you to see if we can write down those 1 to 2 aha moments that you get throughout the webinar today. We'll be covering such simple things, but I think as you look at these, they're pieces that a lot of people are missing. So you're going to say, hey, I know that, but I'm not doing that. I think that's the case with a lot of these. So if you can grab a pen and paper, write some of that stuff down, write any notes down, any questions for me as we go. And then obviously at the end of this, I want you to take action in one way or the other, whether it's jumping into the Function Over Fitness program and working together to really create that program for success, or going at it on your own. Regardless, I want you guys to take action. I want to hear in a month or two, you're in a better place moving forward. I don't want you to be the handful that, and I see a lot of people that continue to kind of digest some information, but don't take action, right? We're not going to get anywhere like that. So make sure you're actually taking action today following the webinar. A little bit about me, who you're dealing with this evening. My name is Garrett McLaughlin, born and raised just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. Made my way to Michigan now for the second time. I lived in Michigan back in 2012, 2013, went down to Nashville, crossed paths with John. Shout out John from Nashville. And now back up in Michigan, actually. So I love Michigan, been here for 3 years now. A little crazy with COVID and all that, but in my opinion, one of the best and coolest and kind of under the radar states out there. I went to school for athletic training, sports medicine, did my undergrad, certified, healthcare licensed, got a master's degree in exercise physiology, sport and fitness. So now trying to do my best to combine these worlds together. So traditional athletic training, working in a sports medicine clinic, usually at a school, professional sports, college, high school, just caring for the athletes in terms of injuries and general medical issues, right? So one thing I've seen over the years is a lot of people are operating in silos, right? We have our doctor here, our physical therapist here, our dietitian here, our psychologist here. So while staying in my lane, trying to do a better job of incorporating all of these areas together in one cohesive program, because I think we can do better and thrive in one area and be really neglectful in the other. So trying to kind of keep these things on my client's radar at all times, just to make sure we're not just becoming better runners in the process, but functioning better, better nutrition, body composition, and just overall health and vitality. Growing up through life, I played a ton of sports, right? So running, not till later, didn't start actually running outside of a sport, soccer, lacrosse, basketball, right? It was involved in there. But until I got to college or after college, played hockey, soccer, baseball, lacrosse, basketball. Was really always bouncing around from one thing to the other. And I was fortunate enough to suffer from multiple injuries over the years, which ultimately kind of took me down this road. I remember one of my first injuries, separated AC joint in hockey, going to physical therapy. The physical therapist worked at a Division I college, so I got to see the college athletes come in on a regular basis, how they operate, how they got ready for practice, and did rehab, exercises, treatment alongside their actual sport, which is pretty enlightening to see early on. And then through just different injuries, concussion was out for a while, metatarsalgia in my foot, IT band syndrome, piriformis syndrome, had several different running overuse injuries as well. And I look back and I think now have luckily identified the culprits on why those happened. And it goes back to my ego more than anything in terms of how I was running at the time and really pushing myself beyond my means. But good to see those things early in life, because it really helped shape what I do today. I think sometimes you have to experience them to a degree and struggle to go through that on your own. And now much more objective about things. It's hard when you're going through it yourself. I think it becomes a very subjective emotional process, but if you can remove that, and even kind of dive into some of the areas we will today, it becomes much more manageable of a process when it comes to injuries or preventing injuries. So in 2016, I created the Healthy Running Program. I actually was down in Nashville at the time, worked with a lot of different running stores down the Nashville Running Company, Fleet Feet Sports, did some stuff with USA Triathlon down in Chattanooga. So got to work with endurance athletes and thought there was a need, right? I think a lot of times we're focusing on individual pieces, but not putting all of the pieces together into one program. So that was the goal here, is to get a little bit more well-rounded. People can get multiple things under one roof. So your running plan, running analysis, strength training, injury prevention, mobility, soft tissue, manual therapy, like all of those things together and I think in one place is good, rather than bouncing around to different providers, because it's a very controlled environment. So these are some of the people I've been fortunate enough, I don't know if some of you are on here right now, possibly, to help over the years here. Worked with a lot of different people with a lot of different goals, aches, pains, and issues. All awesome people too. As I look at this list, I think some of my favorite people on here. Just very fortunate, and I love working with runners. I think such a hardworking group that's it's not hard to motivate a runner. It's sometimes hard to pull them back and to pump the brakes a little bit, and to stay focused on more training doesn't always equal more success or more rewards. So a lot of these people have dealt with kind of myriad of issues, and we tried to kind of rehab, get stronger, and have done pretty well overall when it comes to performance and results. Why this topic today might matter to you, you can tell me. I'm not here to decide for you, but up to 70% of runners get injured each and every year, right? That line alone should be just where I stop why this matters. I know for me, I think so long-term with my goals, which why a lot of it, I realize a lot of the short-term things, aches, pains, and that don't really bug me as much. Because I'm thinking, hey, when I'm 80 and 90 years old, I want to be doing this with my grandkids, still fly fishing, hiking, camping, being outdoors, doing different things. So we need to really do a better job of developing a long-term mindset. A lot of times we put the cart before the horse. We train really hard. We suffer from these injuries, and we kind of constantly go through the cycle. Most runners will get injured each and every year. That's just a fact of running per the research. But our job ultimately is, how do we not eliminate injuries because they're going to happen. There's no possible way we can control all of these variables as we're active and we're running and we're training and we're pushing the body. But how do we do a better job of mitigating the risk of injury or mitigating the severity of injury? So everything I share today, truthfully, injury prevention is the worst name. There's no such thing. Injury mitigation, I think, it's better to be called that. So by doing the things today, you'll be able to mitigate your risk of injury. You're not going to be able to prevent it. But hopefully once you do endure an injury, the severity is significantly less. Within a couple of days, within a week, you're able to get back into a good training program. Priority should always be to avoid the medical system, right? And nothing against the medical system, but we want to, it's costly. It takes a lot of time. It's very disjointed, right? We go from our doctors to our physical therapists or chiropractors, to then our running coach, personal trainer, right? There's all these different people operating, and it's sometimes a hard place to be. So we can stay out of that as much as possible and just continue to train, focus on performance, do those little things behind the scenes to really lay a strong foundation. That's where we'll be the most successful. Nowadays, runners are purchasing a lot, right? They think of the revenue generated just from runners alone. Every time I remember I used to go when I was at Fleet Feet, setting up my table and doing some manual therapy over there. I'd be there on a Saturday morning before the long run and just watch all the purchases roll in, right? New gear, new gadgets, foam rollers, and R8 roller and roller with a nub on it, and this type of device and that type of device from an injury prevention standpoint. So we need to make sure we're not relying on those things. We're understanding the research, what those do, using them to our benefit when they can help us, but also focusing on the other things which will allow us to truly be successful. And then understanding mostly to achieve better performance, you must remain healthy long enough to lay the foundation for success. We can't continue to yo-yo from one injury to the next and expect to run better in the process. We need to put together usually years of good running, right? Aches and pains and things along the way, those will happen, but without being sidelined, without having to completely stop and cease your running program. If we can put years together of successful running, which might sound crazy, that's where, again, true performance is. So laying that foundation to really stay healthy long-term. Now, what I envision for you moving forward here during this webinar, after this webinar, I want you to make more informed decisions to better serve your body first and foremost, body before performance, right? And then you're running long-term. As you experience aches and pains and you're trying to really navigate your running program on a day-to-day or weekly basis, think, what is the best for me long-term? Should I be running today as I feel this, or is resting a couple more days going to hold me? Like, does that really matter in the grand scheme of things, right? Based on when your goal race is, what else is going on in life and all of that. I want you to be, I like this term, movement ninja, right? Beyond running, we should have that foundation as athletes. And I think sometimes we skip that step. We focus on solely becoming better runners when we should be better, well-rounded athletes first, because that's the foundation of that we can really put better running performance on top of. So just being a healthy, well-functioning person, to have the range of motion, the strength, the stability, the balance, that solid foundation to move. And then obviously prevent that run injury PT cycle, right? This is extremely common in the running world. If we can break that cycle in some way, continue to train and be successful, navigate those little aches and pains as they come, that's really putting you in a good situation. And then based on the information today, I want you to try to create a game plan. Take action. Like I said a second ago, I don't want you to digest this information, say, okay, that was great. Look at that, assess yourself, right? If you need to do some journaling or note taking on over a couple of weeks and see, okay, how well am I doing in that area? Am I neglectful? Am I missing anything? Am I on top of this, right? Am I getting the hours of sleep, the right nutrition, hydration? Am I warming up properly? Am I, whatever it is, the thing you feel like you're neglecting. And then of course you can utilize me as much as possible. Some people I've never worked with who I'll email on a regular basis, other people that we work together and we continue to go through this process together. But just to make sure you remain accountable, your program is in alignment with your biggest running goals, health and fitness goals, and you're moving forward in a successful way. So question for you guys, most of you have already commented there in the Q&A area of the webinar. Do me a favor, let me know what brought you to this webinar today. Is there something in particular you're wanting to get through this? anything, right? Share with me something you want to get from the webinar today, just to make sure as we get into the content, we can help weave some of that into the webinar, so you're walking away with exactly what you came for. So take a second, drop a quick note in the Q&A, and let's kind of get an idea of what we want to get from the webinar. You guys struggling anywhere? Injuries, aches, pains, anything currently? Focusing on just solely a long-term injury prevention routine, how to put all the pieces together. Like, what are the things that you're trying to learn and really implement within your program? Long-term, Beth Ann. 9 Lives Lion, how to be resilient through setbacks, how to respect recovery. One thing I think too, when it comes to setbacks, because looking at the injury rate, right? 70% of runners get injured each and every year. So you're going to be injured. The question is, will that injury derail you from moving forward? I've seen and been fortunate enough, maybe it's because my approach or just the luck, fortunate to interact with some of these people, that even when they experience something, able to continue doing the other things, figure out what they need to clean up in their routine. Where can they then, unable to run temporarily, how do we dig into strength training and get better in this and that area, right? So there's always something you can do to keep moving forward and being successful. Injury prevention, starving off pain. Sharon, John, avoiding injury. Avoiding injury makes all the sense in the world. Wondering what your stand is on this. Is cool down important? We'll talk about that at the very end. If you can stick around, that's a good one. I'm gonna write that down here. Good question, John. Motivation and consistency does not match long-term goals. Ooh, that's good. And I think for you, Terry, on the kind of mental side of things, really dig into what is the why behind why those long-term goals, why do those even matter to you? I think sometimes when we create alignment, understand the reason why we're doing things beyond just we want to run, we want to get better at running. For me, I think the reason, pretty consistent, is I don't want to be disappointed when I'm 90 years old, right? I hate to say this, but I look at family, I look at friends, I look at people that struggle with pain on a regular basis, and I don't want to be 90 years old and that person that's struggling. I want to be out there doing and whatever. So I see that in my head of my inspiration behind it. So I think digging into what is that deeper why. Chris, I used to run a lot without injury. I'd go years without being injured, but now as I'm getting older, I seem to be getting injured every few months. I want to keep running and avoid injury as much as possible. I hear this all the time too. And a lot of people, as I get older, not sure if you're saying it that way, but a lot of people throw the age in there as if that's one of the big reasons, which we're definitely declining as we get older. There's no doubt about it, right? Bone mass, muscle mass, power, balance, right? All those things are tending to decline. But we can do so much to offset that and prevent. What components could be missing to remain injury-free? How to navigate injury in a healthy way, both physically and mentally. Awesome, love it. David, I need to get back to running again. Every time I start going, my knees start hurting. So knee pain with running. Yeah, that's a tough one there too, right? So navigating the mental side of things, navigating injuries, and just not getting back into the rhythm. So I appreciate you guys. We're going to dig into that a little bit more as we get into it today. And definitely, if you guys want to talk a little bit more specifically, some of these are very specific. And so giving you a general response doesn't do you any justice. So definitely happy to talk just on a quick phone call or something if that'd be helpful to you guys. But definitely want to intertwine a lot of this into the webinar today if possible. So from a running standpoint, most of the most common running related injuries happen from the knee down. So foot and lower leg, right? Your plantar fasciitis, which David mentioned a second ago, Achilles tendinopathy, medial tibial stress syndrome. We're talking about shins, Vicky. These things are the most common injuries that you tend to experience from a running standpoint. A lot of times, and I think we focus so much on hips, glutes, hamstrings, quads. These areas are important, core, but we look at the injuries when it comes to running, and it's actually from the knee down. Patellar tendinopathy, which is that the tendon, the quad goes into the kneecap, that tendon goes down and attaches on the tibia. So need to make sure we do a good job strengthening from the floor up, strengthening our foot, having that foot strength and foot stability, stable ankles, strong lower leg and calf, strong quad and knee, having good balance between that thigh area. Also thinking about the hip, right? How well is the hip stabilizing? Every time we run, we bound and leap from one leg to another, have to experience 2 to 6 times body weight as we come down to a single leg. So making sure we're addressing these areas and understanding that they're actually from the knee down. But that doesn't mean these other areas are off limit, right? I see people with low back pain and hip and pelvis issues and all of these other things, right? It really depends on, first and foremost, your anatomy and physiology. How you are designed might naturally cause or be an influence or a risk factor for some of these injuries. Doesn't mean you're always going to struggle with that, but you might be just naturally based on how you move, how your range of motion, how your body is structured. You might be feeling certain areas more than others. Previous injury is huge and something we need to respect more. So the most common risk factor for injury is a previous injury. So whether that's a running related injury, you had plantar fasciitis, you have knee pain, you had a herniated disc in your lower back or a stress fracture, anything in the past, you're at a greater risk of actually enduring or suffering from that injury again. So this is where fully going through the rehabilitation process is important, not just getting to the point of pain-free. Pain and injury are not, they don't go hand in hand, right? Some people you'll see have significant injury, right? You look on an image or MRI, that's a significant injury, but they're not really feeling the repercussions of that. Other people have these mild injuries, these tendinopathies and these lower level injuries, and their pain is excruciating. So we cannot solely use pain as a guideline. We use that to make sure we're managing things properly. We still look at pain and use pain scales and all of that, but we can't stop from a rehab standpoint. So, hey, you're out of pain, you're cleared to go. We need to look at function, right? So this is why a lot of the clients that I see coming off of physical therapy, we do a fresh evaluation. We see, okay, you had pain, you had Achilles pain, you're pain-free right now. Let's test you and see, can you do this many calf raises? Can you jump and land on 2 feet? Can you jump and land on a single leg? Can you bound? Can you step down, right? Can you do these things? Are you functional in a way where you're now not just completely going to aggravate that tissue again as you get back into running? So making sure we're really respectful of previous injuries or past injuries, because those things are definitely very commonly will flare up again down the road. And then what type of runner are you, right? Or what type of training do you embark in? We have I know on here right now, we have people training for 50Ks, half marathons, full marathons, 10Ks, right? We have a whole range of people trying to get back into running. So it really spans along the entire spectrum of runners, and it really depends on you and what you gravitate to. Ultra runners suffer from different injuries typically than 5K runners, right? The demands of running is different. If you're running on trails versus running on road, if you're running on the track, right, you're going to experience different things based on the surface and the terrain. So just kind of looking at the picture of, okay, I continuously struggle with this injury. What are my tendencies as a runner? What do I gravitate to? How do I train? Sometimes if you can dig into those a little bit more, you can see some of those commonalities that might be causing some of those issues. Interesting here, factors which influence injury risk. First and foremost, we need to look at running and training errors, right? So they call a training error is if you're making a mistake, you can say making a mistake or not following a calculated running plan. And this is the bucket that most people fall into, is either not executing the plan, whether that's increasing your mileage too quickly, increasing your intensity too quickly, not hitting your paces, running too fast majority of the time, not hitting the easy runs, not matching the amount of stress and training you're putting on the body with recovery. Those tend to be training errors, or adding in something just completely different. I had a woman one time, I think she was training for a 10K, and she went to New York and she said, hey, I went to New York. I met a running group. They were doing 12 miles. I went out and ran 12 miles. That's probably going to hurt, right? If you're training and how much stress you're putting on the body does not meet, again, that new stress, and you're not able to adapt to that stress, that discrepancy right there is usually injury. So making sure you're not making big errors in it from a running standpoint. Biomechanical is something to look at next. So how do you move, right? What does your running form look like? Strengths, It's interesting, some of the research now that strength or weakness is not an indicator of or a risk factor for injury. It's interesting, some of the research that's coming out on that. So I think a lot of times we look at, hey, I have a hamstring issue. Oh yeah, your glutes weak, right? Technically, is that true? There's a lot of debate going on right now if that's true based on the research, personal characteristics on just your body type. Lifestyle is something we need to do a better job of taking into consideration here. And I'm going to talk about that a lot at the very end. Stress management. So not just stress as in, hey, I'm stressed out, I had a tough day at work, or my significant other's driving me crazy. But total workload stress, how much stress are you placing on the body? Work, family, personal, running, strength training, all of those things. And is your recovery routine matching that? Or is your, right, the amount of stress you're placing on the system too great to actually fully recover from? And then obviously sleep, recovery, and nutrition are those components we really need to emphasize there. So research shows that 60% of running related injuries are due to training errors. So this is why, and I think I screwed up royally back in 2016, 2017, right? As I worked more with runners, I remember getting certified, way back actually, active release techniques, doing soft tissue manual therapy. People would come in and say, hey, my hamstring work. All right, let's work on the hamstring. Let's release the hamstring. Let's stretch. Let's do these things. Oh yeah, that feels great. I'm going to go out and run tomorrow. Oh yeah, see how it feels. Let me know. People would come back and say, yeah, it felt okay in the beginning. The hamstring pain came back. I didn't do a good job early on of looking at the complete picture. I was only looking at, okay, what area is affected. Running and following a structured running plan through the research is the most important thing. So if those people came in and said, hey, my hamstring works, and I don't understand, this person is going out there, they're running way too fast. They have a lot of downhill running because of their neighborhood. They're overstriding. Like if I don't understand those things and change those things, we can work on the hamstring all day long. That's going to continuously come back. So looking at your running first, are there any training errors? Assessing volume, intensity, change of terrain, and then how much rest and recovery you're getting in to really offset those things. And then the next thing we look at is biomechanics. So like I mentioned a second ago, biomechanical and lifestyle factors, strength, stabilization, range of motion, running form, sleep, recovery, stress, nutrition, stress management. Those are all secondary things. So looking at the running program first and foremost, which is never what we do. We're always looking at the biomechanics first. Usually if you can make some good adjustments from a running standpoint, you can see some really good results early on, and then tying in the biomechanics there secondary. Now, as we get into the common injury prevention strategies, and feel free, slow me down. Any questions as we go through this, you're welcome to add those into the Q&A or any comments or feedback. Foam rolling, static stretching, and strength training are really at the top of the list in terms of the things you'll see thrown out when they say, hey, my goal is to prevent injuries here, do these things, right? David asked a second ago, John asked a second ago, cool down, right? We talk about warm-ups, we talk about cool downs, strength training, foam rolling. Should I static stretch? Should I dynamic stretch? We talk about all these things. So typically from a goal standpoint, the reason why people want to add foam rolling, I'm not necessarily saying it's doing this, but to warm up before activity, increase flexibility, expedite or speed up the recovery process, and then eliminate pain and reduce muscle soreness. These are typically the reasons why they're being thrown out in the running community to do that. What we know through the research is foam rolling before activity, before running, before strength training, before doing something, there actually could potentially be small improvements in sprint performance, right? 0.7%, very small, debatable if that matters. And I'll give you kind of a quote from the article here in a second. There is, so majority of people are saying, hey, I'm tight. I don't want to be tight. I want to be more mobile, more flexible. I'm going to foam roll, and that's going to help me improve range of motion, improve flexibility. Yes, you can get this, but the research shows that the benefit in terms of flexibility of foam rolling only lasts about 10 to 15 minutes. So that's the biggest thing we see from foam rolling, is you actually see some pretty good results. If we can get more results or more long lasting results, I probably would have everyone foam roll every single day. But the problem is a lot of these results and these improvements that we're seeing don't last long enough. Again, if we're doing foam rolling, and this is how I usually recommend, if you want to improve flexibility or you're tight and you like foam rolling, go ahead, continue to foam roll. It improves you for a short period of time. But when you finish that, do some type of mobility, do some type of movement, and move that tissue throughout the full range of motion. So you're not just temporarily feeling better to improve flexibility, you're doing something to actually hold on to those gains a little bit more long-term. So from a sprint standpoint, they actually thought that this would be a little bit more relevant for elite athletes, right? A 0.7% improvement in sprint performance for a recreational athlete probably doesn't mean a whole lot. But if we're talking about Usain Bolt improving 0.7%, who knows how fast he would be, right? Hundredths of a second faster, I guess, at that point, or tenths of a second. I don't know what it is. But not really as relevant for recreational athletes. One important thing to realize, and something that actually has been out there for about 20 years now, the pressure that is required to deform the fascial tissue, which is this tissue that surrounds our muscle fibers, the groups of muscles and all of that, is greater than the amount of pressure that we usually achieve with foam rolling. So a lot of times we hear, hey, you have scar tissue, you have adhesions, you have trigger points. If you roll on it, you're going to release those things. Technically, the amount of pressure with foam rolling isn't enough to create that type of response at a tissue level. And we're not even really sure what foam rolling is doing yet, right? Is it impacting the tissue? Is it telling the brain to then create some type of relaxation or increase in range of motion or reduction in pain at the tissue? We're not really sure. If you foam roll after activity, again, you can achieve a reduction in pain perception. They usually say you need to foam roll for 10 minutes to reduce pain for 30 minutes. So again, to do that for 10 minutes to reduce pain for 30, is that the most advantageous? For some people, that might be very important. If you're going out there to run and you have a short run and you say, hey, I want to feel better for this 30-minute run, okay, foam roll a little bit for that might help you. But the results really aren't long lasting, and they're not, like we said a second ago, really impacting that tissue that you're rolling on. It's just somehow reducing the sensation of pain, reducing the sensation of tightness. And then it can minimize decrease in sprint and strength performance. So if you have multiple sessions in a day, I have some people that will do some strength training in the morning and run in the evening. If you're sore from that strength training session, some foam rolling might help you perform better later in the day. But again, not sure if this is necessarily truly from a performance standpoint. Is it sensation? You just feel better, so you perform better? Not really sure. So really unclear right now in terms of foam rolling. We see results from it. Those results, unfortunately, are not long-term. So if you are foam rolling, continue to foam roll. It's your time. You can do whatever you want with it. Try to do something afterwards, before or afterwards, depending on how you're incorporating it, just to make sure you're holding on to some of those results and actually addressing the true underlying issue. Now, from a static stretching standpoint, so you can see here in the picture, I just realized, looks like my friend Janelle. If you're sitting statically holding this position, trying to stretch the tissue, lengthen the tissue, this is kind of what you'll see from a static stretching standpoint, as opposed to dynamic or with the dynamic warm-up. Goals of static stretching: increase muscle tendon flexibility, joint range of motion, reduce soreness, improve recovery, improve performance, prevent injury. Like, those are the things we're aiming for as most people add static stretching into their routine or think they need to incorporate it. What we don't realize a lot of times is looking at the demands of the sport, right? Understanding what do you actually want to get better at. I use Simone Biles, and you need to get into these ridiculous positions that most people cannot get into in terms of flexibility and be strong and stable and powerful, right? Probably one of the best athletes ever. Or are you a runner who has to go through the running cycle, who sits at your desk all day or does other things? It's less range of motion required to live that way compared to her who's training and pushing through end range of motion all the time. So really understanding what are the demands what are the things you want to improve. Running is a very mid-range sport. If we don't need a whole lot of range of motion, we need range of motion in a couple of key areas, but more flexibility, more range of motion doesn't always equate to better running perform or more resilience to injury. Some of the key motions we do want to make sure we have from a running standpoint: hip extension. So you can see this woman here, as she pushes off and propels the body forward, she's extending that hip and pushing the foot away and pushing the ground away from her behind. This is one of the big areas I see if some people are limited. So whether that's tightness in the hip flexors or they just don't have good mobility in the hips to get back, get the leg back behind them, that's an important motion to really focus on. Ankle dorsiflexion. as you run, you strike the ground, the body travels over the fixed foot. That's where you get into this flexed ankle position. Dorsiflexion is one of the most important ranges of motion to run. So really working on your calf flexibility, extensibility of that Achilles tendon, and making sure your ankle has good mobility. And then last, we have great toe extension. Not everyone, 99% of people are neglecting, right, the foot and the ankle. We're so focused on stretching the hips and mobilizing the hips and doing all those up there that we neglect where our range of motion really needs to come from a running standpoint, and also realize the majority of injuries happen from the knee down. So great toe range of motion, ankle range of motion, right? Those things are super important from a running standpoint, to make sure we don't neglect those smaller areas, because we usually always focus on the hip and the quad and the hamstring in those. So from a research standpoint, what we know is based off the research study, static stretching does not reduce your risk of injury, improve performance, or reduce muscle soreness. If you have limited range of motion or asymmetric hip extension, ankle dorsiflexion, big toe extension, those things I just showed you a second ago, I definitely would address those, right? If you're unable to get through the normal healthy mechanics to run, address them. I see some people that I would say this person is not tight, but they might lack hip extension, right? They don't need to stretch all of these things. I just want to teach them how to extend their hips so they can push their body forward. So we really focus and isolate those key things. Sometimes when you feel tight, it doesn't actually mean a muscle is shortened and it needs to be lengthened. Tightness could be weakness and overloaded muscle. It could be following a poor running plan, poor endurance, so you're fatiguing a little bit quicker than other tissues. So from a cool down standpoint, is a cool down important? And I guess depends on how we're defining cool down. I know John asked this a second ago. Something needs to happen, I think, after your run, and it really depends on the intensity of the run. If you're doing a nice, slow conversational run, you probably don't need as extensive of a cool down after. If it's some type of speed work, I probably would incorporate something after the fact. I usually do very minimal stretching, as you can see from this. I personally like to have people walking for 5 to 10 minutes, keeping that heart rate elevated, usually elevated between 100 and 120 beats per minute, continue to get blood circulating, moving the muscles, because a lot of times those muscles contract and they relax. That's a venous pump to get the blood flow circulating back to the heart and around, so we can start that recovery process. I have more people walk for a cool down than anything else. I will have select people, depending on what we find in the evaluation, they might do specific stretches to them. But usually not so much for a cool down standpoint. Other people might debate that, everything I said, that usually works fairly well for me. Now, from a strength training standpoint, obviously this is where I spend the majority of my time with people, so it'll be interesting to share some of these results with you. Typical goals of a strength training program: people say, hey, I want to increase muscular strength, endurance, power, improve balance and stability, improve performance, prevent injury. Those are the common things people are after when adding a strength training component. We know strength training can improve balance, stability, strength, endurance, proprioception, awareness of the body in space. This 6-week study right here showed that just by training single leg squats, hip strength, you can improve how you function, how strong you are and stable you are in a single leg. When they retested someone's running form, they actually found that running mechanics were unchanged. So even though in a controlled strength training or physical therapy environment, you strengthened the hip, you stabilized the hip and improved form on some of those key exercises, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to carry over to running. So we need to do a better job of looking at running mechanics. And if something needs to change, there needs to be some type of drill to address that. Most people, I think, are looking at running mechanics as that's the thing. I think the running plan and executing the plan is usually the main thing, and then looking at some of these other risk factors in there, see how you can tie those in as well. So making sure you're looking at the big picture, since strength training alone is not going to improve running efficiency, but seeing how we can bridge that gap a little bit better. Now, through some of the research, what we see is strength training does a really good job of addressing the risk factors associated with injury. So looking at weakness in the calf, is poor ankle dorsiflexion, do I have pelvic drop and I'm losing stability throughout the pelvis? Are these little things going on there that I need to address? Strength training, physical therapy, those things, in my opinion, go hand in hand. They're just at different ends of the spectrum. Do a real good job of addressing those. However, strength training alone has not been shown to prevent injury. We can improve strength, we can improve endurance, we can improve a tissue's ability to be pushed to its limit. However, if you just follow a generic strength training plan, as they did 2019, there was a study. There were two groups. There was a group that both groups completed the New York City Marathon. One group followed a strength training plan, 12 to 16 week plan. The other group didn't. There was no difference in injuries between those two groups. They both experienced about the same amount of injuries. So strength training alone, especially in a general way, has not been shown to prevent injury. I look at that and I think, okay, what if we got more specific? What if this program was designed for that person? All of those things, that's probably something that's going to happen here over the next 5 to 10 years. More specificity, but it's hard because you're giving different people different things. So it's really hard from a research standpoint. But with strength training, being able to prevent and decline bone mass and muscle mass as we age, a lot of people that say, hey, as I get older, running gets harder, my body hurts more. I always think those are the people that need strength training the most, right? What do we need to address? We know we're losing to a degree muscle strength, bone mineral density, power, stability. Those things are going to decline naturally as we get older. And a lot of times once we're injured, we go through PT, we stop running for 1 to 3 months, we decondition, and then as we get back into running, we try to jump back into the same thing we were doing before, but we just lost whatever many months of not training, of not pounding the pavement, of not doing our exercise or our strength training because we're only focusing on PT clamshells and hip bridges and those lower level things. So I think a lot of people don't realize how much they lose, even though they're getting out of pain. We're losing a lot in the process, and then we go through this cycle again. So that's where strength training usually fills the void, takes the next step from rehab and pushes people to that next level. So as they get back to running, their body's able to withstand the 2 to 6 times body weight as you come down and slam the ground, and you're stable and you're efficient and you're powerful. That helps bridge the gap to a degree. And then, like I said before, running retraining is needed. If you have faulty underlying mechanics, right, something wrong in terms of running form, we need to address that. Strength training alone will not improve that. It might lay the foundation for it, right? If you improve something in a controlled environment, that's usually where I start most people, but then make sure they're pulling that into their running and doing some type of running retraining session. So a big thing here is we need to do a better job of looking at the bigger picture. I'm not going to tell you need to take up Buddhism or anything like that and start meditating or whatever, but we need to think about the body and our entire routine from a wellness standpoint. And this is where we're always super neglectful. We focus on, hey, I'm injured, I want to prevent injuries. Okay, I'm going to foam roll this. I'm going to strengthen this. Then we don't take into consideration our environment, our mental health, right? Are we super stressed out with work? Are we sleeping well, hydrating, having good nutrition, right? All of these things play a role in that. The way I like to look at it is water in a cup, right? How much are you filling your cup? And this is where runners usually struggle the most. Like I said before, runners are the most hardworking, focused group of people, which to me, that's their biggest downfall as well. I wish some of my running clients were actually a little bit more lazy and they would miss a workout run or maybe slow down a little bit more as they go through their training. But we think about what things fill our cup. So we think of what are those stressors, right? We know if this cup overflows, that's going to be burnout, that's going to be fatigue, that's going to be injury. So we don't want the cup to overfill. So if we look at the cup itself, the cup is our foundation. This is our strength. This is how much stress our body can handle, right? So you look at Usain Bolt, right? Him, strong, fast, powerful, athletic. The big cup. He can train to a great degree and really push himself to a limit. If I push myself as much as he did, I'd probably be injured within the first 15 minutes, right? I just can't. My cup, my foundation isn't as big. So we need to understand, what does our foundation look like, and how much can we fill that cup with stress before it overflows? Because we want to fill it up, right? We want to push it. We want to get to this upper level, because if we can continue to stress this, right, to fill up this cup and then recover, to fill up this cup and recover over time, that cup is going to get bigger. That means I can train harder. I can run longer distances. I can add more strength training and resistance. It usually takes an extended period of time, though, and more than people realize. You'll feel better from training in as short as 2 to 3 weeks, right? We see neuromuscular adaptations very quickly. But to actually adapt to that stress, this takes months and months and years sometimes. So realizing just because we feel better doesn't necessarily mean our cup has gotten bigger yet, but being patient in that process. So running, strength training, daily stresses like psychological, mental stresses, those kinds of things, add water into this cup. To remove water from the cup, which we want to do after the fact, right? Stress plus rest equals growth. So we want to make sure we have these other aspects here: sleep, rest, recovery, nutrition, hydration, mindfulness. These things are how we take that stress away to a degree and how we better adapt to that stimulus. Because if we're always adding, a lot of people want to add, right? This injury hurts. I'm not going to stop running, but I'm going to add these exercises in. So this is like, does that make sense, right? The first thing you want to do is try to take away. How do I remove some of the stress if I'm going to add a new stimulus into it? That's usually the best situation to really see good results. So ask yourself, how much are you filling your cup? Are you constantly overflowing it with water? All of these marbles here, we'll call these marbles, right? Marbles in a jar. So you can see these are different people. Person right here, low stress, great nutrition, sleeps 8 to 10 hours a night, right? Able to recover, doesn't have many marbles in that jar. This person works long hours, sleeps 4 to 5 hours a night, poor nutrition. These people need to be treated very differently. So like I said, we always focus on what can we do to the body, what can we strengthen, what can we stretch, what can we stress that way. First thought process here from an injury prevention standpoint needs to be, what can we remove or where can we do better? Can this person here, can this person find a way to have a better wind down routine to get, instead of 4 hours of sleep, can they start getting 5 or 6? Do they need to meditate on their lunch break to bring down, because their work is just absolutely insane and driving them crazy? There's certain things they can pull back on and improve from a wellness standpoint that shifts them from this full glass of marbles to this full glass of marbles here, or jar of marbles. Because the thing is, once we start adding water into these jars, this person, right, with the single marble in there, it can handle a lot of stress. It can train quite a bit and that glass isn't going to overflow. This person right here, jar number 3, we can only add so much water to that jar is going to overflow. So this is where we tend to neglect, is looking at how full, right? How full is your cup right now, and realizing that this is going to shift week to week, month to month as you go through your training plan. So your training plan might not be able to be linear if something is really stressing you out, if it's a marital problem, if it's work, if it's you just not sleeping well and there's a lot on your mind, you might have to change your training plan to account for that, because you can't handle the same amount of stress. So a lot of times from an injury standpoint, we continue to follow the program that progressively overloads the body. We don't take into consideration some of these other areas here, right? How well are we sleeping? How well are we eating? Just overall general well-being and mental health. And then we tend to get to the point where we run into injuries, we run into overuse. All of this is stress on the system, cortisol, inflammation, and hypersensitivity of the nervous system. So just making sure you're not getting to the point where that cup is constantly overflowing. This is a recipe for repeated injuries if we don't recognize. So making sure we're looking at those other factors as well. So as we start to wrap up here, some of the things we covered in the webinar today, some research behind running related injuries. And I know I gave you with all of this a 30,000 foot overview of these topics. They're so in depth. And usually with each person, we try to go into them a little bit more specifically, but hard. I could probably do a topic and a couple hours on each one, but we just don't have the time for all that. The validity of popular injury prevention strategies, do whatever you want to do in terms of those things, right? Foam rolling, stretching, strength training. All of them can have their place. I think we glorify some, even though the research doesn't really substantiate it. So making sure, I think, reflecting on the research, let's not waste our time, right? Why do more than we have to? Let's focus on what are those handful of things that we can do well, and let's go all in those areas. And then how to assess your training and other lifestyle factors to achieve more sustainability with your running. So understanding running related injuries. I had an interesting quote in the article. What did it say exactly? There's no way to endure a running related injury without running, right? So we look at running first and foremost, right? 60% of injuries are from training errors. Look at the running plan, look at the running first, and then look at the other factors second. But then pairing that with your lifestyle, right? How are you living? How happy are you, right? Mental health and nutrition, sleep, hydration, all of those things play a huge role here. So making sure we're taking those into consideration. So now, quick question for you guys, and I appreciate you guys interacting with me and writing comments and things in earlier in the webinar here. As we went through this, is there something simple, one or two things that you see within the webinar today that you feel like you can improve right now within your routine? All of the stuff you can see is fairly simple. And those people that work with me, I am usually very simple and very boring, right? Because I think just looking at the research, it's these simple foundational things that are the most important and the most effective. We don't try a lot of these other trends and fads and gizmos and gadgets and things. We're very simple when it comes to training, doing those little things well over a consistent period of time. So if you saw something within that one thing, two thing, just say yes or no in there. Welcome to state what that is. If you're someone that's not sleeping, not eating, not training properly, if there's anything in there that you think resonated with you today, just drop a quick comment in the Q&A and let me know what that is. Welcome, Shannon and Terry. Good to have you guys on here, Sharon. So you guys pop on and see you guys at the beginning. So thanks for joining us today. The 9 Labs line, yes, skip Saturday AM workout, sleep in. That might be a good idea. A little more sleep for you. Kristen, strength train, yep, but I think making sure, looking at the other things, like I said, not just adding that, but figuring out where does that fill the void. A lot of times I see a lot of runners that come to me say, hey, I'm training for a race. I'm doing Detroit Free Press in October. I'm running. This is going wrong. I want to add strength training. And it's like, we're already doing this. We're adding this, and it's more stress to the system. So just making sure we're finding the balance with these things rather than just adding more, hoping to get more. John, cool down for sure. I think 5 to 10 minutes should be sufficient. Vicky, I like that. Look at the big picture, spiritual, emotional. I think that's huge. Can't start the day without my quick meditation. Don, mindfulness, slipped off my schedule, lost 20 minutes at lunch, but it's worth finding a new place for sure. Dog will be jumping all over you, but it just improves your disconnect from from that. Better sleep. Sharon, yes, let's get you sleeping more. Yeah, for sure, David. I think getting specific there is important. And some of these strength training things, like we talked about strength training, and in the Facebook group, people talked about that recently, or asked questions of how much to do, what do I do? To be honest with you, it's pretty simple. We don't need to be in the gym 3-4 days a week. That can be beneficial depending on your goals. Sometimes a single day, sometimes 2 days, can be 30 minutes, can be 20 minutes, right? I was working on a program this morning for a woman, right? She just finished Charlevoix training for marathon in October, and her second strength training day, because of her mileage picked up, we just dropped that. Like, we're going to turn this strength training day into a dynamic warm-up. So you're going to do 5 exercises. They're not going to crush you. They're going to warm you up for your run. They're also going to address your weak links. Like, we find ways to cheat the system as opposed to just adding and feeling like, oh man, now I'm worn down, I'm doing too much. So as we start to wrap up here, guys are always faced with the big question at the end: where do you go from here, right? The maze of running, performance training, injury prevention. It's common. I know I've been lost in the maze too, from time to time, and I'll be lost again. It's hard to navigate yourself through. I've looked at this picture multiple times. I know 2 paths through this maze right now. But if you feel like you know what you need to do, you want to take action and implement some of the stuff we talked about today, go for it. Again, take action, get better. Let me know how it goes. I want that for you. If you feel like you want to fast track as much as possible, do an evaluation, eliminate the guesswork, get on track as quickly as possible. Look at some of those other factors. I always find that most people, it's hard when we look at ourselves. We need to almost step outside of that and look more objectively. And that's something I like to do with a lot of my people, is take out the emotion of things, look at objectively. What is the body telling us? What do we need? How do we do this? How long is it going to take? It's easier from an outsider. So if you're interested in taking that next step in addressing injury prevention, improving performance, I have a program. This is the second time I've run this program. In my opinion, this is my this is now my new favorite one. I also do a Run Strong challenge, which is pretty cool. Functional over fitness is awesome because it's not just strength training, injury prevention, running. We're tying in these other wellness areas, right? Nutrition, hydration, mindfulness. We're tying in those other things to just improve and be better overall humans in life, because I think we don't want to be short-sighted and just become better runners, right? We want to function better from a deeper level. So 3 of the big outcomes that I try to optimize when it comes to injury prevention, and this is what we do with the functional or fitness program, first and foremost, clarity, right? And I see that from some of you on here today. It's, hey, I'm going through this. I keep going through this. I'm not sure why. Like, we need to step in there and intervene as much as possible and identify. I was talking to a woman, and I hope I was tough on her too. And I hope I got through to her. She had a stress fracture. She finally convinced her to go see the doctor, someone I've never met before, never worked with. And I wish I had the opportunity of. Had a stress fracture. They told her, hey, just stay off it a little bit. The MRI was only of one area of the body, didn't actually show the injury sites. They didn't say definitively. Pushed her to get the MRI. It was a stress fracture. Doctor says, hey, just in a couple months, just start running again. You can start progressing back in. But it's really hard in those situations to have clarity on, hey, what's going on? Why did I endure this injury in the first place? If we don't go back and actually reflect on to some degree, how do we know we're not going to make the same mistake again? So first step is always finding clarity. What's the issue? First and foremost, what are my goals? What are my strengths and weaknesses? And how do I get myself from point A to point B in the most direct line possible? It's probably going to end up being one of those roller coaster rides, as it always is, from point A to point B, but creating that clarity and that alignment in your program is the most important thing. And then how do you get more with less? Every time I finish a program, I sit, and this is more so lately over the next couple of months, and I'll sit there and look at it. And sometimes I'll get caught for like 10, 15 minutes just looking at the program thinking, what can I get rid of here? Like, what doesn't matter? What's that fluff that, yeah, it looks good on paper, it's probably fun and whatever, but it's not really going to move this person closer to their goal. Like, I actually want to see, how can I remove and give this person less exercises, less running, but still deliver that end result. So that should be the goal for most runners, is how do we get more with less? Because more tends to lead to overfilling that cup, like we looked at earlier. And then lastly, we want to maximize performance, reduce injury risk, and just improve overall function of the human body. It's my hope by doing all of this, and you guys being active, is you're not just doing this for a short-term PR, right? We're doing this and looking back when we're 80, 90 years old and thinking, I did things well. I'm still running. I'm having fun. I'm active with my grandkids. I'm doing this. I'm playing pickleball with the old guys down the street, whatever that thing is. So just developing a good long-term mindset, I think, is super important. So if you guys are interested in, this is kind of what's included in the Function Over Fitness program. I just want to give you guys a quick overview here. Always start with that clarity, right? Look at goals, review injury history, review a running plan, look at your current routine. What are we missing in there? What do we need to address that we're not seeing, or we're going about the wrong way? Sometimes people are doing things, and it's what I find with runners a lot of times. Runners are so motivated. They're doing things and they're diligent and they're on top of it, and they're not like they're sitting on the couch just not addressing it, but they're doing the wrong thing, right? So making sure everything is in alignment so you can move forward and see those results you're after. The movement assessment, to me, is the biggest piece. I think from a running standpoint, like I talked about with some of the research earlier, from a strength training standpoint, we can strength train in a general way all day long. Classes, yoga, all that stuff is great, right? I have a lot of people that do that, and you can see good results from that. But if you can get a little bit more specific to your needs, look at your body, identify what are those weak links, what are those risk factors that could be predisposing you to injury, and you address those, usually you can see those results a lot more quickly than just going about it in a general way. And then based on that movement assessment, based on your goals and your routine, how do we design a specific strength training and injury prevention routine that's just 100% individualized to you, obviously as little as possible, to get that less is more principle there. Specific to you guys here on the webinar today, and I wanted to find a way to add a little bit more value. So what I did was, and a lot of people that enroll in my base, I have a couple different tiers in my healthy running program. In the basic level, we usually have movement assessment, injury prevention, strength training. I wanted to add on top of that, for those of you guys that sign up, add the running analysis at no extra cost. Just as a bonus, I love people that join webinars. As you can see, I'm I'm a nerd. I call myself a nerd. I love the information and the research and understanding these things. I love people that also love those things. So I'm going to add a running analysis on top of that, and also a discount because you're on the webinar today, just because I appreciate you guys from being here. The program itself is fun. In addition to just following a strength training program, we have a weekly bingo. We have different things that we've taught from a wellness standpoint. Hey, some things that are fun. I think people have fun with. Park at the furthest spot in the parking lot. Send your best recipe in terms of nutrition. Are you hydrating to this amount? I have Jill Merkel, the dietitian, adding in nutrition content and doing consultations with people, right? There's a lot of other things we're adding in to tap into that whole wellness piece. But if you're consistent throughout the program, as we have these weekly check-ins and things, you have the chance of winning prizes, up to $500 in prizes, running swag, cookbook, different strength training equipment and those things. So it's pretty fun, and it's a little bit more involved than just following a strength training program. You're surrounded by a community of other motivated runners in a fun environment. So everyone learns from each other. Everyone has a good time. No one supports you more than a runner that you never met before on the internet, right? So we really tap into that. And then lastly, if by chance you do not see results, which obviously that's my goal 100%, I do offer 100% money back guarantee, and I don't want your money unless you're walking away thinking like that was worth it for me. So that's always there. When I look at these programs and I look at people and people's actions, I always think it's better to be, and this is the reason why I think about my long-term goals and my why behind things. I think it's always better to be proactive and be preventative than to react to problems. The medical system can get expensive. Insurance, copays, imaging, testing, all these other things that go into it, right? It can get costly depending on insurance and what you have. So it's better to be proactive with your health because you have to live in this body for the rest of your life. So make sure you take care of the thing. So I want to do a good job of making this as cost effective as possible, create results for you guys. And again, not just be on me hosting a program that's in my interest, that hopefully you walk away and you're like, okay, I know what to do. I know how to be a better runner. I'm feeling better, and I've identified and I'm working on my weak links. That's kind of the goal I have for you guys at the end of the 6-week program. So for you guys, the basic level of the program was originally $199. So like I said, I'm going to add the running analysis on top of that, and then also provide a little discount for you guys here today. Only doing this short term. Only offer this to webinar people, my fellow nerds out there that like to digest and learn this information like I do. So there's nothing I'm going to keep open. If you have a friend that wants to sign up with you, I'm completely fine with you saying this to a friend. I'm not going to promote this discount anywhere, but I do need to know tomorrow, because as I lay out my marketing for the program and get people involved, the program will be full price for everyone else. So this is only a perk for you guys over the next, what is it now, 8 o'clock, the next 16 hours or so. So if it's something you're interested in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the chat box. I'll send this to you tomorrow as well, but you'll get that link in the chat box right there. Open the chat box on the bottom of the screen. You probably see it flashing right now. Click the link. All it is a simple questionnaire. Another thing you'll learn is I do not allow people to sign up for things without talking to them first. I want to make sure you get results. I want to make sure you and I are a fit, because I want to enjoy this as well and have those people that feel like, hey, I can really help this person. So there's a link in the chat box right now. If you fill out that questionnaire, it's just allowing us to talk, getting some basic information on you. We'll schedule a phone consultation. We'll talk more in depth. We'll see and make sure things are in alignment. So as we lay out, do an evaluation, do a running analysis, lay out this program, we know kind of what we're getting into on the front end. So take a second right now, open the chat box, click the link, fill out the questionnaire. Should take you 3 minutes or so, some simple questions so I can understand more about you. And let's schedule a phone consultation here over the next couple days. Again, if you do it today, we can't talk till Sunday or Monday. That's completely fine, but you have to do it tomorrow by midnight. We can get the phone call done at some other point. So guys, okay, so chat says it's disabled on iPhone. Let me see if I can put it in the Q&A. I might not be able to. Answered, type answer. I'm going to type an answer here. If you guys can't see it, I'm also going to send it out to you guys. I'll send it tomorrow. I sent it in a comment to Vicky. So Vicky, even though you see that coming to you, it should be visible to everyone in the Q&A now if you don't see it in the chat. just in case you guys missed it. So what questions do we have? I'm going to clear out of the screen for a second. There were some questions as people signed up. John, hopefully talked about the cool down. I would definitely say walking at minimum. If understood there was anything more going on that needed to be addressed, it could be addressed in there. But I think at least adding a 5 to 10 minute walk would be important. Andrea says, is foam rolling overrated? So no, I don't, I think foam rolling is done a little bit too much, in my opinion. I don't mind foam rolling in any way. I think we can accomplish more with the right type of strength training, the right type of mobility, and following the right program than we do rolling. I think a lot of times we run into problems, something hurts, let me roll that. I hope it gets better, but we never identified the actual problem. So I think if you identify the problem and you put it into a good, well-rounded routine to address the problem and not just the sensation of pain or the location of pain, I'm fine with people foam rolling. I have no problem with it. I like it myself. I do it a couple different areas, my back, usually my calves, in my hip, but I always do something after the fact. So people are doing it a little bit too much, in my opinion, but what can you do? If you like it, you like it. Strategies prevents injuries. We talked about Jamie. David, the knee thing. So I think the knee thing is there's a couple of different things to look into when it comes to knee pain. If you've had time off from running, so anytime someone comes back from an injury, I was just talking to Vicky about this 2 hours ago. I think we need to do a better job of having checkpoints along the way. We're clear from PT. What are my exercises to prove I'm done with PT? I'm going to run. What are my exercises that prove I'm ready to run? We know the demands of running 2 to 6 times body weight, single leg, a lot of range of motion at the toe, the ankle, hip extension, like I talked about today, single leg balance, stability, being able to jump and land on a single leg. I always test people first. And that way, objectively, rather than saying, hey, I think I can run today, we can say more definitively, okay, I can actually withstand the demands of running. That's why I'm being overloaded at the knees. And then I'm going to start at the right point in terms of a running plan, which it's always easiest to start too simple and to feel like this is really boring than to jump back into what you were doing before. I had a woman a ways back coming off a lower back issue, radiating symptoms down into her leg. When she tried to run again after taking a month off, she immediately went back to 6 miles because she was running 40, 50 miles a week. 6 miles didn't really seem like anything to her, but coming back from doing nothing over a month, jumping in and then exceeding her body's capability, that flared things up and she was in this cycle. Luckily, we took a step back. She didn't like the thought at first of going to some run walk intervals initially, slowly building up. It's just progressive overload is all it is. My body is here. I want to get to here. I slowly increase the demand on the body over time. So you just got to figure those things out of where you are and what you need to get to. So for you guys, I know there's a couple questions here. I'm over on time. I have a couple more things I'm going to just chat about. If you guys want to jump off, I appreciate you guys being here tonight. If you want to hang out for a couple minutes, I appreciate that too. So let's see. Question. Thanks, John. Hope you have a good night. Safe travels home. Got to run. I wasn't sure if you were running home or heading home. So thanks for joining us tonight. Let's see. Next question. And we'll wrap up here really soon. Cause and effect in regard to weakness, imbalance, etc. Good question, Mary Lynn. I think we definitely need to look at the body in the individual pieces. Like we said, running injuries, right? 60% of running injuries are training errors. So looking at that first, how do we improve our plan or how we're running and executing that plan? And then next, looking at the body. So I think, are there weaknesses? Sometimes it's hard to say because pain causes weakness to a degree or inhibition in a muscle. So I see a lot of people that once something is hurt, they come in and say, hey, my hip hurts. I test them. Oh, your glute is weak. Was your glute weak, or is pain causing inhibition and that muscle's not firing the same way, right? So it's really hard to say sometimes when it comes to that. I think and reason I like a lot of my clients who stick with it long term is because we consistently go through this process. Every quarter we reevaluate, we look at strength, we look at range of motion, any aches and pains, what do we need to dig into? We adjust the program. We do the program, we check in, we fine tune along the way. Next quarter, we evaluate. What do we see? Do we get better on those areas? Didn't we? What needs to change? Like we slowly go through this, the process of refinement. A lot of times I see people that come to me in like right now, hey, it's June, I want to get ready for October. Okay, yeah, there's some stuff we can do between now and October. That's probably just laying the foundation and doing it in a smart way so it's not getting in the way of your running. We need to go through these training cycles of in-season running, have some time, have some downtime with running, off-season, hit the strength training hard and get ahead, and then drop back down as we get back into in-season. Like we go through these cycles over time, and usually if you can put those together, that's where you see really good results. So I think looking at strength, range of motion, and balances, those are important. We need those, but continuing to refine that over time, because that process never ends really. That should be it. Let's see. Nine loves Lion. Thanks for coming out. Everyone else, that's it. Hope you guys have a great Thursday evening. I appreciate you guys joining. Any questions, anything from me, click that link. Let's talk a little bit more about the Functional Over Fitness program. Hope you guys have a great night, and I look forward to chatting with some of you soon. Thanks, guys.